Hello, I'm Gretchen Lida with Horse Network. I write reviews here and as well as covering movies and books, and I also write personal essays, and I am so excited for today's guest. For this month's HN Read, we have the amazing cartoonist, author, artist extraordinaire, Jean Abernethy. Jean is famous for the Fergus cartoons. Jean has been a horsewoman her whole life. She grew up at a small farm near Lindsay, Ontario, where she started riding a pony at the age of 7. By 15, she acquired a young horse and even the luxury of a saddle. Her first college education was an equine studies program at Humber College in West Toronto. She then earned her art degree at the Ontario College of Art, now OCAD University, majoring in illustration. Jean's cartoons and illustrations have been published in equestrian books and periodicals for over 35 years. She has illustrated books by Monty Roberts, Olympian Peter Leone, for Paint Horse Journal, Quarter Horse Journal, Horse Canada, and Horse Illustrated have also published Jean's work. While growing her artistic career, Jean maintains a hands-on presence with horses. Besides riding for pleasure, she's been a barn hand, a carriage driver, and a trail guide. Her half-Arab mare, Willow, has been her work partner for 6 of the 7 seasons she's worked as a trail guide in Algonquin Provincial Park. Jean also enjoys saddle making as a hobby. She and Willow share a saddle that she custom built for them both. I bet you those saddles are beautiful. Jean's star cartoon character, Fergus, the horse, entertains an audience of over 330,000 followers on Facebook and Instagram. Go check it out. They're awesome. Fergus's 5th book, written and illustrated by Jean, has just hit the market. And if you did order a copy of that book, it is on its way now. The shipment just came in. She also has several other books. In 2018, Jean's 3rd book, Fergus and the Green Grass, won a Spur Western Writers Award of America in the category of storyteller. And in 2019, Jean was presented with the first place award for the editorial illustration by American Horse Publications. Welcome, Jean. That was the fantastic fantastic trailer of your new book, Jean. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you, Gretchen.
You pick out books. I was totally like, oh, Fergus is on here. We're gonna do Fergus. So I'm thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for this opportunity, Gretchen. I'm delighted.
So the first question that I wanted to ask you is, who's Fergus based on? Right? So go ahead.
Fergus is based on every horse I've ever known.
Oh yeah?
That's pretty much it. Yeah. 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 There is no real living individual horse. Now I will say this. The horse that I had during my high school years was a bay with a lot of white on his face. So that's where the markers come from. But personality, he's just equine.
Yeah. So he's all horse all the time. And it sounds like one of the things that really impressed me about Fergus as I was reading this newest collection was that Fergus does everything. Like he's one of those horses that you can put any kind of saddle on him. You can put him in any kind of competition. Is that based on your own experiences? Because it seems like you've done just about every type of riding as well.
Well, there's a lot of things I haven't done, but experience in realistic illustration. For the periodicals where I'm doing technical stuff, I'm doing arena diagrams, and I have to study up on this. I've illustrated polo, I've illustrated, things I've never done, but that gives me a lot of insight, particularly into the tack, into the tradition, into these other sports. And so I'm very grateful for that experience. If I haven't done it, I've probably drawn it so that I can put Fergus there and I can get the gear correct. And horse people love that. So yeah, it's all part of the package. I've enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, I've loved it. Like even when you put the harness on Fergus, like it's all like accurate, and I can hear my driving friends geeking out over it. And I'm just like, oh, look at how close it is.
Horse people really notice that. They truly do. If I get it wrong, they'll notice that too. So even though the horse is utterly ridiculous, I have to get the harness right.
Yes, horse people are a particular bunch. We are. So we were talking during our screen test a couple of days ago, and I thought this would be fun to talk about. What have you learned about the proportions of horses and how to get drawing horses correct over time? Like we were talking about how it was a little bit of a struggle last time, and I was like, I wonder, that's really
It's a continual struggle. It becomes less of a struggle if you learn. There are little tricks to learn, and I've started this at the age of 6. You learn little things like a horse's head is the same length as its neck. These are not, there's difference in breeds, of course, but the horse's head is the same length as its neck. The horse's head is the same length as from the point of its hock to the ground. And those little rules of thumb help you to get a horse in proportion. So if you're drawing horses doing anything, you're constantly checking these little things. So he looks realistic. You're kind of getting it right. You're not getting it wrong. And this leads us to the Uffington horse cartoon.
Yeah. We should have it here with the big white.
We should have it here. Yes. And I drew that very carefully from an aerial photograph so that would be correct. Yes, because consequently checking up on these things, as an artist, you have to be your own worst critic to improve. You have to always check and double check and triple check to get these things right as you draw. So that's what inspired that cartoon.
I cracked up so hard when I saw that. What is the biggest challenge of drawing horses?
Exactly that. I mean, it's, the way to make a good drawing is to start by making 10,000 bad ones.
So is it a lot like riding horses where you just have to mess up that particular movement so many times before you can get it right?
Yes, you try and you try again, and you won't be happy with a lot of it. But if you work at it, it's like playing a musical instrument. You just keep doing it, practice till you figure it out. That's what it is. So the real answer is when someone says, oh my God, you drew that so fast, how long does it take you to make this drawing? Well, 40 years and 20 minutes.
That's such a good answer, right?
That's
it's like the people. It's like the people who are they're like, oh, I can ride a horse. And you're like, when was the last time you rode? Oh, I rode on a trail ride in Yellowstone. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
What have horses taught you about art? What have you learned about art from horses?
I think the pursuit of beauty. I don't know. Horses have, same as you probably, they've always been kind of the core of things for me. And so it's the pursuit of beauty. I don't remember ever being at an age where a really lovely photograph or drawing of a horse didn't really inspire me. And I just, particularly with illustrators that I aspired to, I would see a beautiful drawing of a horse and there would just be this thing inside me that I wish I could do that because it's so beautiful. I don't know why, but that's just what inspired me. So the horse is just such an innately beautiful animal that it was exactly that pursuit. No matter how the light strikes them, and they're always outside in the sunlight, and it's endless beauty.
Is there a particular horse book or different type of piece of horse art that really inspired you early on?
As a child, yes. I remember we had this dinky little public library where my mom would take us for books. And C.W. Anderson was in the height of his career at that time. And I remember he drew graphite drawings. There's an example right there. Gorgeous lighting. He knew his anatomy. He knew, you can tell by that drawing, he knows horses through and through. And it was drawings like that that I craved to be able to do. I wanted somehow to learn to do that. And I tried and tried and tried until I could do it.
Yeah.
And ended up making Fergus.
Say that again?
And ended up making Fergus.
I mean, I think Fergus will last as long as Billy and Blaze. I honestly like. I was noticing that as we were reading through, is that Fergus has a timelessness to him that some other comics don't have. And I was wondering why that is. There might not be an answer to this, but he has this like grace to him and this honesty that I really, really like. And I wonder why you think that is.
I wonder if it's, and I've thought about him aging. Do I draw an older horse? Well, it just didn't feel right in here to age him the way I am aging. I compare it to Charlie Brown. Always has been, always will be a little boy. And that's years and years and years. Charlie Brown's still a little boy. And I see Fergus being the same horse. He's somewhere in the middle of his life, just being a horse. And that's who he will always be. If I want an old horse, I'll make one up. And I will make one exception, as in the Greener Grass book. The last scene is looking at Fergus. There he is, now older than he was, so that was part of that storytelling. But in the real world, Fergus is just Fergus in the middle of his life, and that's probably where he'll stay.
Oh, that's lovely, because then we'll just get to have more Fergus.
Yeah, well, I've got the little colt for a young horse. So I've got these other characters. If I need different ages of horses, I can invent them as I need them. Fergus just stays there in the middle.
Has there been an invention recently? Because the inventions in the books and in the comics are really wide ranging. Like you have the super, super, beautiful Frisian. You have the little prehistoric horse. You have the slug, who's my favorite.
Yeah. Did you like the slug?
I love the slug. The slug. Okay. I'm like sitting here like, oh my God, the slug. I want him as my horse trainer to sit here like on my shoulder so he can feel when the things are wrong and like notice the things. And I'm just like, I love the slug's commentary. The slug is great.
I remember cleaning stalls in the barn down in Georgia where everything's hot and sticky, and there's this slug going up the wall, and I hold my hand up and think, dang, that thing's as long as my hand. This is just who hangs out in the barn. So that's kind of where the slug came from. Do the horses talk to slugs at night? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. I also love the there's one comic that I didn't have you get a picture of, so you all will just have to see it in the book, but it shows where fairy slippers come from, or fairy stirrups come from. The knots, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the most magical thing. So y'all better order the book so you can see it, because it's something special. So is there one of the horses that is like has been one of your favorites recently?
Oh gosh, not really. I have an affection to all of them and use them as I need them. And Socks is an example. Do you remember Socks, the horse that has his socks aren't where his socks are supposed to be?
Yeah.
He's kind of an incidental. He's a real good example of making up a horse that I need to make that joke. And Case the Frisian movie star, he kind of comes and goes. I use them as I need them, and they all have their own place in the humor. It's just fun to play with that. One of the things that you also talk about in the book is that it started out that the humans told the joke, and then it ended up being the horses telling the joke. Yes, that was a transition that was really interesting, because before I invented Fergus and was just drawing generic horses, the horses would stand there with a blank face, and it was the humans telling. And it was the transition of creating Fergus to where what's his name? Well, it was a generic horse, didn't have a name. And I heard that question enough that I thought, okay, maybe I should make a character. So I did make a character. When I made a character, I had to speak through him. When I made the character, the horse had to start speaking. So that's when it happened. So then the horses told the jokes, and I could put stupid blank looks on the humans' faces. Like most of those humans don't even have eyes, which exaggerates the horse's great big bugly eyes. And that's good fun. But that's what happened right there. And I just kept creating the humor and didn't realize what was going on. And then I took a look at that and thought, oh, right, this whole thing is, the whole source of the humor has done a 180 there, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is
what was happening.
Say that again?
I created that before I realized what was really happening. It was just also gradual.
Oh, cool. So with that gradual change, what did you like? Because one of the things that I found super, like I was kind of just jealous, is how you're just funny all the time. Like there's a lot of times. No, well the comics are funny all the time, and I was like, how does she do that? And I'm like, how does she? So what have you learned from horses about humor, or what have you learned from writing Fergus for so long about humor? Like, is there a trick? What have you learned?
In particular, well, I was raised on a good diet of Bugs Bunny when I was a kid, which is a start. Well, I never thought Disney was funny, but Bugs Bunny would just crack me up, and my brother too. I think expecting the unexpected, between that and the fact that horses don't think like we do. Their logic is not the same as human logic. It just isn't. And that's the crux of where a lot of the humor comes from. We as humans, we have this horse, and there's something we want to do with this horse, and doggone, we're going to do it, and we're going to be the horseman that gets it done. And what does the horse have to say about this? Why are we doing this? I want you to jump over that thing. Why should I jump over that thing when I can walk around it? It's that constant. Why should the horse always do what we want? Or why should they even think it's reasonable to work for us? But they keep forgiving us, and they keep doing it. And so that's the meat of it right there. It's these blessed animals that they keep doing things we ask them to do, whether or not it makes any sense to them. Mm-hmm. I love it.
I think we have a really good one that kind of fits with what we're talking about. It's the one with I think it's the Socrates quote, if I remember correctly, that you sent over. It's really funny. We should have it. It's I spook, therefore I am. Oh, yes. It's really good.
Oh, Descartes.
Yeah. Descartes. My bad. It's Descartes, not Socrates.
I think
all my philosophy friends are going to hate me. All right. We're going to come back to that one in a little bit. Let's move on to some other questions. So one of the other questions that I had for you is that it seems like Facebook and social media has really changed, has really like given Fergus this humongous audience. Like you have a humongous Facebook page audience, which is fantastic. What has it been like to go viral?
It's been fantastic, really. Now that it happened early on, I learned to use Facebook very clumsily in 2012 and started dragging out my old comics, coloring them in the computer and putting them onto Facebook. And it zoomed. I was blown away. Between 2012 and 2015, it blew up to 300,000 plus. I think Facebook got as high as 317,000 by 2015. And then Facebook changed the way they distributed content, so it stopped growing. And it's still over 300,000. But it wasn't hard to find a book publisher at that point. So I'm extraordinarily grateful to that Facebook audience. They commented. I owe everything to the fans, really and truly I do. It's been a really fun trip.
Is there a fan interaction that stands out to you?
There's many. One of the really fun ones, and this brings up, I think, one of the comics that I sent, the Bucked Off Snowman. Do you have that one there, Carly? That one zoomed around the world. A young woman, and jokingly I commented, if anybody in the world wants to build this thing, please send me a photo. A lady by the name of Monica Graff actually built this. It's still hanging out there in cyberspace, and you'll see it come around every Christmas. It's a photograph of this thing was actually built out of snow, and it is hilarious. But that one really went viral. I was very proud of that humor. That one went really viral, and it's still there. That was a particular one that really zoomed. And there are other stories more profound. For example, a lot of comments like, "I've been going through a hard time lately, thanks for the laugh." Or I've had fans order books that they want to read aloud to someone who is dying of cancer. That's very moving. You know, I'm very touched by that. Very touched by that, and very honored.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't exist without an audience, right? Like the reason to create art is an audience. I know for me, like I have a comment that someone sent me. I wrote an essay about depression, and someone sent me an email privately. I have no idea; it's a complete stranger. The email said to me, "You know, your essay made me realize that I'm going to go get some help," and I still have that like up someplace because those kinds of things.
It's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
You never know how what you say or do will affect someone somewhere. It's an honor.
So one of the things that you also talk about is that Fergus kind of also changed along with natural horsemanship, and how the way we talk about horses has changed in the last 20 years. So how has Fergus changed over 20 years?
The humor has changed in the same way. This brings me back to a comic I could never draw now. And it's a lot of old farmer humor because I grew up in a very rural place. But this is before Fergus. It's an old black and white drawing of this this rack of bones. You know, it's a skeleton basically laying in a pasture, and these two old farmers. And one of them said, "Yeah, well, I noticed just yesterday she didn't come in with the others." You know, and it's a rack of bones. Well, I could never draw that now. That would be considered so inhumane. I could never draw that now. or a joke like, "Make sure your pony is securely tied," and they're all just tied right up. You know, I couldn't do that. That used to be funny, but that's not funny anymore. So there, I have to go for the mule intellect and work at it. But really, there's our whole approach to horsemanship has changed, and so I have to be very careful of that humor.
Yeah, I think you do a super good job with it.
It's not funny to hit them with sticks. It used to be, but it's not anymore.
No, yeah, it's not. That's really interesting. Has it made it? And you talked about this a little bit. Has it made it harder? Has it changed the way you think? Like, what is that like?
It's fun. It draws out more creativity. Because it brings out things like the Descartes joke, where it has to be less physical and more intellectual. There you go. Yes.
Oh gosh, it's so good.
Yes.
Another thing, so like, yeah, the jokes have changed over time. Has your writing changed over time? Your actual physical riding in the saddle changed over time?
Well,
as Fergus has changed? Yeah.
That works. And has my riding changed? I don't know. I didn't see myself on video years ago, and I don't see that now. So other than getting older, I don't think my riding has changed. No, that's not true. That's not true. When I was a little kid trying to stick on a pony with no saddle, my legs were all about staying on the pony. When I got to Humber College, I learned that legs had another purpose. And so in all the years since, I've been trying to ride less with my legs and more with legs and less with hands. And so, you know, it's like, I would hope most riders trying to be softer and lighter constantly. I'm always working on that, trying to be softer and lighter. And that said, still, the comics that get the biggest response from the audience is when somebody falls off. You know, I draw a cartoon of somebody in the dirt, And the response is enormous. Horse people,
Really?
you know how horse people love to tell you about the wrecks. They've all got stories of
Yeah.
how many times they fell off and how bad it hurt. And you're thinking,
Mhm.
no, don't show me your scars. Don't. And that's what horse people are like. You know, they're so proud of their scars and their dump off stories.
Right?
But they all want to be softer, lighter horsemen at the same time.
Oh, breaking out their surgery photographs. Jeez,
Oh
Louise.
my goodness, please don't.
That's fascinating. That's interesting that probably hasn't changed. Like that's probably been the same for the last 20 years.
That doesn't change. People still fall off, and slapstick for horse people, slapstick comedy will never get old because they keep falling off.
Yeah.
And so those jokes will never get old. I have to just think how.
It looks like we have a little bit of a freeze with Jean right now, but we do. Oh, is she back? Oh, there you are. Oh, cool. So we were talking about fall off jokes. Can you repeat the last thing you said for me?
How many times, how many ways can you make a joke about people falling off their horses?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Is that part of the reason that Fergus is so spooky? Do you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I used to have a horse named Vinny, and he could blow sideways faster than any creature on the planet. Oh my Lord. I spent the first 2 weeks stuck to the saddle horn on him, and he was an absolute love. He was just a very thin-skinned, sensitive horse. He could just blow sideways because he was scared of virtually everything. And I introduced him to the big world outside the arena. He knew all about the arena. He knew more than me, but he didn't know about wild turkeys in the woods.
Oh no.
Therein came the stories. First time he saw a deer, he nearly left the planet. You know, literally, spook first and think later.
Yeah, tell me what happened. Did you stay on?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I stayed on. I'm not very tall, you see, and thankfully strong, or at least I was strong then. That's more than a decade ago now, but yeah, it stuff like that is just funny. It's just funny, you know. He'd see something. Sometimes it was nothing I could even perceive. And most horse people have been there. All of a sudden, the horse is over there. You're lucky if you're still on. And what was it that you saw? You might never know. But the poor soul, you can't get mad at him because it's not his fault.
No.
He's just being a horse.
Right. He's just trying to survive, even if your butt's in the dirt.
Yeah. A little mare I have now, she's done it too.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. She's a very spooky creature. She's not sensitive.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Is there something that she spooks of particularly?
Oh, pretty much anything. Yeah. Llamas are a problem.
Llamas? Oh,
Llamas are a problem. Yeah. Pigs are not too bad. She's blown up over cows. She gave me a good cartoon over that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and that's one I didn't send you. You may have seen it in the first book. Courage keeps us going, and laughter keeps us sane. Now, that cartoon is one that came from my little mare the day she blew up about the cows. That was a very bad day. And she had lived with cows. I've never forgiven her for that one because she has lived with cows. I'm thinking, what's your deal? But no, she was blowing her nose like a white-tailed deer. She was so afraid.
Oh, yeah?
Well,
Where were you?
I think I might have made a little bit of money off that cartoon.
Yeah. Well, see, she was just spooking to give you material, right?
Yeah, that's right. She was inspiring me. Yeah. I kind of wish
we have right. There's some other ways I would have liked that, right? Were there particular cows?
They were great big Holsteins. These ones, the ones that scared her so bad. I don't know why. I will never know why she was so worried about these cows. Because like I said, she lived with cows. She had pulled a sleigh full of silage and helped to feed cows. So I could not get her to explain herself. What's the deal? You know what cows are. Anyway, yeah, she really lost it. It was one of those moments where the horse is so upset, you don't know whether it's safer to get off or stay on. So I got off and I got back on, and she was just going squirrely. Anyway, I got home and I didn't get hurt.
I'm
and
glad.
I got home.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a win.
It was, but I will never to this day know what upset her about those cows.
So this is interesting. What would we think about, like, because, I didn't think about this before, but like Fergus, like spooking is his like thing, right? And so many horses, spooking is their thing, as we just discussed. Like, I wonder what it is. Do you think laughter helps with fear? And why do you think it helps with fear if it does?
Absolutely. And that takes a long time to learn. Took a long time for me to learn. And like I mentioned, this Vinny horse, and I rode a little Arab gelding before the Vinny horse that was unbelievably spooky. He was young, he was green, he was underconfident. He was a lovely, clever little horse. And I learned a lot from him. And where was I going with this? Yeah, he and I grew each other's confidence. Because my kids were little, and I kind of got back into riding on this spooky little horse. A friend of mine said, I know where there's a green Arab gelding you can ride. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. Anyway, I started with this little guy and really enjoyed him. But we had moments where, the dog chased a rabbit right underneath us, and he nearly left the planet. And it was those moments where you just stay on, and you spook first, you think later, you stay on, and you just ride that out. And so unless you go through those experiences and learn to sit on that and learn to deal with it, then you learn. Now if I'm riding along and my poor little mare sees something and her knees buckle, I can just laugh and say, oh, doggone, did you do something? And to me now that's funny. It used to be scary, but now that's just funny. The horse goes sideways.
Why is it?
Oh dear, you saw another thing, and to me that's just funny now.
There is I've listened to some humor scientists once who talked about that the reason that we laugh at things is because it's something that we think is dangerous, and then it turns out not to be. So laughter is almost a signal to other human beings that the thing is not dangerous.
Absolutely. And another story about that Vinny horse. This horse was 3/4 Arabian, 1/4 saddlebred. So, he's a fine-tuned man. And I had him out in the arena one evening, and he started just going AWOL. And I got off, and I couldn't figure out what was bothering him. Well, I soon figured out that the wild turkeys were flying up into the trees to roost for night. And he saw them before I did. So this was just scaring the dickens out of him. But I got him under control, got him calmed down, and I got back on to ride into the barn. So I'm riding in. Well, the poor soul, by this time his nerves were just frayed. He was just spent from all this spooking. And while I was about halfway to the barn, a firefly lit up here about 3 feet in front of his forehead. He lost it again. This was all his knees buckled. Well, how funny is that? I mean, there's no way that that's not funny. This poor soul, he couldn't take anymore, and then he lost it because of a firefly, And that's where the spooking humor just never ceases to be funny. These creatures react in ways that humans can't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we reacted like that every time we were scared, things would be different in the world, wouldn't they?
Yeah, well, we can startle, and that's funny too. That's a source of human humor, but it's on a whole different dimension with horses, as you know.
Mm-hmm. The horses also seem to both laugh at themselves and seem to laugh at the humans a lot. For example, we have one that I personally requested of Fergus spooking of a tack box. That's super, super funny. I love that one. I just sat there and laughed because I just know what that's like.
Yes. Well, that's another thing they'll spook at is when something's different than it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we don't.
Right.
Yeah, we'll have to see that one in the book. I'll see if we can find it. It's super, super funny. The other one that, I also meant to mention to our dearest audience, if you have any questions for Jean, please ask them in the comment section. we would love to answer them for you. Please just write them down. We'd love to hear you. What have horses taught you about, and even Fergus himself taught you about humility? Because he's super.
Oh, everything. Horses humble us constantly. And I think that is when you're trying to get a horse to do something and you're trying to present it so they can understand it. And when you finally realize that they didn't get it because they don't think like you do, then you're humbled immediately. You say, okay, I'm sorry, you don't think like I do. Of course you didn't understand. And you have to take another approach or refine your thinking or something like that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes perfect sense. Yeah. Well, it also circles back to a little bit what we were talking about earlier about revision and drafting, and about how, like, you have to, that picture of that perfect horse came out 40 it took 40 years and 20 minutes to do that perfect horse that quickly.
Yes, precisely. And horses are so forgiving. They'll sometimes keep trying when they have no idea what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And, things obviously don't go right, but they'll keep trying, and they're amazingly forgiving in that way.
Yeah. Fantastic.
When you're forgiven by a horse and you know it, you are humbled.
Oh, yeah. That is so true. Do you have a time that you were humbled by a horse?
Many, many times. You realize why the horse didn't do it. You realize what you did wrong, whether it was losing patience or taking a wrong approach. And then you suddenly realize the horse was trying and the horse was forgiving you. And here I was trying to break in a colt at the age of 13. What did I know? But there you are. And some of it comes in hindsight even. And then you start to realize how much that horse forgave and kept trying. And that's extremely humbling.
Yeah. Yeah, the gift of the humble horse too, right? So one of the other questions that I had was, what do you think Fergus will be like in 2040? Do you think Fergus will still be?
Oh my goodness, Gretchen. Well, I'll be 79. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. He'll still be a horse in the middle of his life somewhere. But it's hard to imagine, and here's the reason why, is because 20 years ago, the internet was in its infancy. Social media didn't even exist. If you had told me in 1999 that 300,000 people would be reading these comics on some invisible cyber thing, I wouldn't have believed you. And so where do we look forward 20 years from now? I don't know. I'm amazed by the thought, but how could we even guess?
That is a super humble answer, Jean. That is a good question. We have 2 reader questions, so why don't we see what we have for the first one? Yay, I love reader questions. Thanks for asking, guys. Or y'all, as we were talking about. Jean and I were talking about the plural y'all.
All y'all.
All y'all. Oh, my bad. So the question is, I think you can see it, Jean, is, has Fergus done saddle seat yet?
I don't think that he has. There was once or twice when I got his legs wrong and he looked like he was racking, but that was a boo-boo. But no, I think actually he hasn't done saddle seat yet. And whether he will or not, I've never been a saddle seat person. I have ridden racking horses. I've ridden gaited horses. I like a standard transmission personally, but I think we need to get him doing that, or else we need to invent a Southern character that can do that gait down the trails, like some of them big old walking horses, y'all.
Have you drawn a gaited horse yet? Has there been a gaited horse in the book so far? Or the comic so far?
Not that I can recall. But thanks for that. That's a good suggestion.
All right, let's see what our second question is. So we have the question from Carla with a super cute picture of who was the inspiration for Fergus's personality?
I think he's my alter ego, really. I think the humor, and in some ways all of my characters are, but particularly Fergus. Yeah, his name is from my grandfather. My grandfather's first name was Ferguson Abernethy. So I shortened that to get the name, but the personality I just think comes from deep within.
What was Ferguson like?
He was
Looks like we might be having a little bit of a problem with the connection. Oh, there we go.
Are we still there?
Yep, there we are.
Okay. Yes, my grandfather was had a great sense of humor. He was a carpenter, so he knew the physical getting on with life and, farming, carpenter work, the outdoors, all those kind of things. He liked to read a lot. He was very musical too.
He sounds a lot like a friend of mine. One side of her family is a bunch of farmers, and the other side of her family is a bunch of professors. And she says when she goes on vacation with the professors, they want to like go and see everything. And when she goes on vacation with the farmers want to hang out and chill.
Yeah.
Which reminds me a lot of Fergus.
Fun stuff.
Was Fergus, so describe this alter ego. I'm super fascinated. How is Fergus different than you? How is he like you?
I don't know if I can even answer that, Gretchen. Like when Fergus is faced with something he hasn't done, I don't know. I just think up an answer that might be completely illogical or silly or turn the concept on its head. Here's an example. It was a recent one that went on to social media. And this one isn't even in the new book because I've made it since then. Mm-hmm. Fergus he's got his dressage rider on. Clip, clop, clop, clop. Clip, clop, clop, clop. And Ryder says, he hears this and he says, oh man, Fergus, are you missing one of your shoes? And I rolled that concept around in my head for the longest time of how Fergus might explain that, well, no, he's missing 3 shoes, in fact. Because I always draw him with either 1 shoe or 3. That keeps the barefoot people happy, parentheses. Anyway, so I twisted this concept around in my head. How's when you got a little word bubble this big, you got to get the humor in there and your words are limited. So there's some wordsmithing goes on. And suddenly it hit me. No, I'm not missing 3 shoes. Are you missing one of your shoes? No, I'm wearing one of my shoes. So that's the kind of turning things around that makes the good jokes. That got a good response too, but it took me a few days before I realized what the punchline really was.
How long do the punchlines usually take you?
Oh, it varies. Some of them happen immediately and others, like that one, takes a few days. Some of them I'll jot down. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Some of them I'll get a concept for the question, but the answer might not come for months. But if I have a good subject, I'll jot down the first 2 frames and I'll go back to them in months or weeks and finally figure out the second half of it. So it varies.
Yeah, it's kind of like writing. It's like one day it finally appears.
Yeah, it's like that. Absolutely.
Right? You're finally able to get that transition or this particular movement or finally go past the cows and not spook.
Finally.
So these are questions I always forget to ask writers, but people always tell me they want to know them is where do you find your inspiration? What do you do to stay inspired?
I spend time with my horse. I would like to say I read more than I do. My other work in illustration is inspiring because I'm reading stories from other equestrians and illustrating their ideas. It's constantly inspiring. And when I'm working on stuff with my own little horse, then just spending time with her every day. Pick up your feet, darling. Or if she doesn't want to, or if she's afraid of this, or if there's something that we're working on that I don't know how to present it, or she's not getting it, or she is getting it perfectly. and I don't realize that she got it and she did get it, or she's ahead of me. It's all these little things that are constantly inspiring, both in the artwork and in the conceptual part. Because I can draw those hooves better and I can draw those legs better if I groom my horse every day. It just puts me right in tune with the animal.
I love that. I'm going to go tell my boss that I do better at grading papers if I ride horses.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You do everything better if you ride horses. It fixes everything.
So what does a normal working day look like for you?
Well, that varies because, as you may or may not know, I've spent my past several summers as a trail guide up north. So that's a whole different lifestyle than my illustrating life than the rest of my year. That's a fun job too. There's an awful lot of inspiration there because those horses are characters. They come from all walks of life. They come from all different levels of education. Some of them know things, some of them don't know things, and that's comedy soup. We have so much fun up there. That's my summertime. A normal day with illustration is, right now, I'll get up early in the morning. I'll have a perfect cup of coffee, a flawless cup of coffee. I'll do a little bit of reading, and when it gets light, I'll go see my little horse. I'll ride if there's time. And then I'll come back home and go to work on whatever it is I'm working on. And that depends on my jobs and my deadlines. And reading, it's always a juggle. For a freelancer, it's always a juggle. But that's a typical day. Come back, spend a few hours working, and take my evening.
Sounds like a pretty structured day.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Well, the working out the conceptual parts of my work takes a lot of focus to think up the ideas of the cartoons. When it comes down to drawing the pictures, and I'm basically just coloring. So it's really quite boring. So I'll put on YouTube just to entertain myself, and and I can watch people riding. I can watch Sheila Varian and her vaquero horses, or I can watch jumping horses, or I can look up anything on YouTube that I either need for reference or want for entertainment, and that all helps the work. It's very rewarding.
Is there a YouTube channel you like best?
No. I just
pull up whatever has horses on it.
I don't subscribe to any channel. I just pull stuff up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Horse YouTube is a great place. It's a dark and dangerous place. So I have two more, and then I think we'll come to a little bit. I guess I have three more. One of them is, do you have advice? There are more and more freelancers nowadays, and there are more and more young freelancers. Do you have a piece of advice that you would give to freelancers?
Oh my. Well, don't give up and draw every day. Keep up your drawing. Just draw and draw and draw every day. Because it's like playing a guitar. If you don't keep doing it, you're not going to be good at it. And I've met young folks that come through art school and are designers per se, but they can't draw, So that's the main thing, is learn to draw, even if you don't intend to be more than a designer. If you learn to draw, you'll be a better designer.
It's like, there's a Colin McCann quote where he says, don't be an artist, or worse, an artiste. Someone whose identity is that, instead of someone who, he's talking about writing and how writers write and nothing else matters but what's on the page. Doesn't matter about all the accoutrement. You just have to keep working.
Yeah, keep at it. And no matter how good you get, there's always somebody that's better than you are.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't get your nose out of joint. Just keep getting better. It's back to the Uffington horse and being your own worst critic. And that can be a mean cycle. But if you don't do that, you don't improve. Mm-hmm. You can go overboard comparing yourself to others, or you can, I think it's a healthy thing to keep a list of artists in front of you that you admire, work that you aspire to. That's certainly, like I had described doing with C.W. Anderson. I just wished I could do what he could do. Even when I was a little kid, I even traced his drawings. not to try and fool anybody, but to just try and figure out how he did it.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally got there. But yeah, it's that effort that I don't know what kind of passion that was, but that's the kind of effort that makes you good.
Do you ever get writer's block?
Well, I used to say no, but it has happened occasionally. When there's bills to pay, you work through that because you have to. So yeah, sometimes it's been very hard, and I'd be scrounging through dictionaries and books to try and find some thread that might have a joke in it, because I had to produce more cartoons. And sometimes that can be really tough, but I have always managed somehow to come up with something.
Do you have any advice you would give for fighting writer's block? Other than I've definitely been there where it's like, you're hungry, so you need to make sure that you get your thing done faster.
For fighting writer's block, I think, is to not fight it. Sit back and breathe, because something's funny. And every joke you make is not going to be the best joke in the world. But if you sit and roll it around, you'll come up with something. You're bound to. Another thing I used to worry about, and this is what I should mention to young people, I used to have a mild anxiety that, what if I run out of jokes? Don't worry about that, because you won't ever. It's infinite. Just keep going.
That kind of reminds me of, does this kind of fit? There's an Annie Dillard quote that she says, don't hold it, don't save it for later, give it all, give it now.
Yeah, that would make
sense. Is it kind of like that?
That would make sense. I remember back in the 80s, do you remember Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Do you remember that? And they said this thing called cowabunga. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Well, I remember making a joke of some pony spooked because somebody yelled cowabunga. And at the time that was funny. Doesn't make any sense now.
Right.
But as our society evolves and our culture moves along, the jokes will move along right with it.
Yeah. This actually feeds beautifully into my last question, is that towards the end of this particular book, you talk about how you created a horse named Monique, who's this fabulous, is she a Percheron?
She is. Yes. The Percheron, as you know, evolved in France, was developed from the French horses. So that's why Monique is French. And she speaks a word or two of French, just occasionally, whenever I can draw on my translator. Monique the Melancholy.
You created Monique in response to the Charlie Hebdo's attack in France. And I was wondering, what do you think horses can teach us about living through 2020?
Oh, my. Well, and the other tragic things that go on around the world. And
oh, yeah.
In the case of that, Monique had been in my mind for a while with her French accent. But when that Charlie Hebdo thing happened, that seemed to be the perfect moment to bring her out. And she could be the melancholy character. So I brought her out then. But I think what horses teach us in dealing with all of these awful things is to be still. Just, you can turn on the news until you're so anxious, you're just a wreck. But if you go out to the barn and brush your horse, and you realize that they're just standing there, and there's no present, past, or future, they're just there, and they're just waiting. And you realize that if you could slow your mind down to where theirs is, everything would be easier. And that was one thing about Monique and about that particular cartoon, is that was about empathy. There's another little cartoon. I don't know if I sent you this. Words Fall Short of What We're Really Feeling. Did I send that one across? That one got an enormous response. I have a niece that is autistic. And given the trend in the growth of therapeutic horses now, all sorts of therapeutic riding centers for veterans, for disabled children, for learning disabilities, for emotional disabilities. That's really growing, and that's really expanding right now. And so that particular one does get, and always did get from square one, gets an enormous response, because sometimes words aren't enough. And horses are in that world where there's no words. But when you stand real still, or and I've been hugged by a horse when I was feeling down, boy, that was a moment. But when a horse just stands beside you and is just there, that is so profound. You realize they're not in a world of words. Just standing close is enough sometimes. And that's powerful stuff.
Well, Jean, unless you have something else you want to talk about, I think that is an absolutely fantastic place to end for the night.
Thank you. I've enjoyed this enormously, Gretchen. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. It's been an utter pleasure having you.
It has been a pleasure. And I want to give an absolute shout out of gratitude to listeners everywhere. Thank you for all of you who have pre-ordered a book. Whether you have or haven't, if you've just enjoyed the Fergus cartoons, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Fergus and I love our fans.
That's because the fans are fantastic.
Fergus would know about the fans. It's all for you, folks. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you all. The book should be available up now on EquiShopper as well to order. Like I said, the shipment just came in, so those books will be on their way to you shortly. And we will see you next month.
Thank you, Thank you so much, Gretchen.